for another VSANA seminar. And I like to say this is where geology and art meet. I hope this is true, but I certainly think so. And tonight's program is going to be features of outstanding viewing stones, how to recognize an exceptional stone. And Paul Harris, who is one of the most dedicated stone enthusiasts I know in the world, is joining us today. He's extremely knowledgeable and will be sharing his views. And I will be also sharing my views on what qualifies or what makes a good viewing stone. And the guidelines for the use of trace display stones we'll talk about a little bit. And this information may help you develop a better displays, and we hope a better eye when you're looking at stones to add to your collection. Now, I often receive, maybe once or twice a week, people contact me and say, send me a picture, and is this a good stone? And I received this message so much that it led to this particular program. Now, when people are searching for viewing stones in nature or in a stone marketplace, the most challenging issue they face is how to recognize the features of a good stone. If you're collecting in nature, as this fellow is, and you're picking up a stone that's covered with mud or algae, it's kind of hard. But it's still possible to discern the features. Now, let's just look at this particular stone. And what is important when you pick up a stone, you want to look at it carefully. Look at it from all sides, top, bottom, left side, right side, and do it slowly, because you want to notice all the different features that each stone has to offer. Now, let's see, did I skip a slide? No, I didn't. Okay. Now, I believe that good objective features of a stone, together with good subjective features, contribute to making an excellent viewing stone. Now, by this, I consider objective characters to be shape and form being the three-dimensional aspects, the color, texture, and pattern on the stone, and the material. These are all quantifiable features. The more subjective criteria are age or appearing to old, and it can be subjective depending upon the viewer and their knowledge of rocks and oxidation and other processes that affect rock. The overall impression and feeling that's generated when viewing a stone, and also the suggestive nature of something greater than just a rock. So it's a combination of objective criteria and subjective criteria that contribute to making a good stone. Now, today in China, Korea, and Japan use the same basic criteria for evaluating stones, although there are differences in interpretation of these criteria in each of those countries. And it's rare to find a stone that meets all of the criteria. If we're out in nature walking along a gravel board, along a stream, and look down, you see a variety of stones. And so Paul and I think that the best way to learn about the features of excellent stones is to look at a variety of individual stones. And as we look at them, Paul will talk about some aspects. I will comment about others. And we'll look at about 20 different stones today in the program. And we'll offer our comments. And then at the end, as I mentioned, you can comment on them yourself. Now, starting with some Chinese stones, since China is the origin of stone appreciation, the criteria for developing or evaluating stones can be traced back over 900 years to Mi Fu, a famous stone connoisseur, and he developed the criteria of show for thinness, toe for channels, mold for channels, toe for holes. So, and Zhou or Zhao for wrinkles. So the criteria he developed 900 years ago, thinness, channels, holes, and wrinkles, all can be found in this Ying stone from southeastern China in Guangdong province. Now we can see other examples of this in the Taihu stone on the right with the holes and wrinkles. The Lingbi type stone on the left also showing thinness, showing aspects of these four criteria. If we look at other Chinese stones, we start looking at some of the other aspects, such as oldness, the appearance of oldness, more subjective. In this particular stone, it has been inscribed. You can see the inscription here, telling who owned it and the date, and recognizing this stone as a Dao Tong stone or gateway to heaven as part of the Tao's beliefs. And in the Tao's beliefs, there were 3 major and 7 minor gateways to heaven. Now, does the inscription make a difference in evaluating this stone? Can a great stone or outstanding stone still qualify if it's been inscribed like this? Okay. Paul,
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, Tom, and just to sort of transition in, I was thinking in terms of your opening remarks, you juxtaposed the shot of sort of collecting rocks in nature, and then we saw the outstanding Chinese stones. So I feel like the program in a way tries to bridge some of the gap between those things. The practical side of the program is when you're out in nature and you pick up a stone, you want to look at it closely and things, but the real challenge is always, is it going to look good when I get it home? And that's what I feel like I've learned a little bit over time, and I've learned from being around people. So this stone, why is this stone considered to be outstanding? This is just an interesting thing in terms of what Tom's been doing with the VSANA site, because this is related to stones and poetry. This stone in itself is an interesting, certainly looking stone with an unusual form. But as the caption says, Li Po gazing at waterfall, it's, I believe it's Li Bai, a Tang Dynasty poet who wrote a poem called Gazing at a Waterfall at Mount Lu. Like Mi Fu bowing to the stone, Li Bai gazing at the waterfall is a canonical image that has been rendered visually many times. And this stone looks like Li Bai gazing at a waterfall. So this is an interesting example where a stone becomes outstanding or takes on added interest with a different cultural context. Just as an aside, sorry, Tom, I didn't talk about this with you when we discussed
No,
this.
that's all right.
I,
This is fine. This is good.
I'm a I'm a professor, so I did my research. If you just do even a quick Google search, Li Bai gazing at a waterfall at Mount Lu, that is a canonical poem in the Chinese canon. And basically, Li Bai sees a waterfall off of a mountain and he looks at it from afar and it looks like mist coming off the mountain. Then the next few lines, it's one of those 8-line, very short poems. And the next few lines, he's up close, right underneath the waterfall, and he compares it to what we would call the Milky Way. And I'm bringing this up because what's so beautiful about the poem is the radical shift in scale. And that's what is striking about a viewing stone, is that the very small evokes the very large. So in the poem, he goes from the waterfall from afar on a mountain is the mist off the mountain. Up close, it's the whole Milky Way. So this, I just would encourage you to Google Li Bai gazing at a waterfall, and you'll see the outlines of this form over and over in different visual renderings. So this stone would have a completely different resonance in a different cultural context.
Paul, this is not a landscape stone. Some people feel that only landscape stones can be outstanding.
So we'll certainly be questioning that, because the great thing is everything I just said about the poem, his gazing at the waterfall in that poem is powerful because of the gaze at the landscape and the landscape being able to shift scale so radically. So this is not a landscape stone at all, but it does evoke that startling shift in scale that really interesting stones so often do.
Okay, shall we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Now, this is a small stone, about the size of your fist, if you close fist. It's from Japan. And if you were walking along a gravel bar searching for stones and you saw this, would you pick it up? Would you take it home? I suspect that the majority of people, maybe even some of you, would leave it, pick it up, look at it, and toss it down, back, because it doesn't look like much from these two angles. However, if you look at it carefully and change the orientation, you end up like the picture on the right, a beautiful hut stone, a natural hut stone that hasn't been carved. And these are hard to find, even in Japan, where there are hundreds of hut stones being sold in the market. Most of those are like the one in the left that have been carved. So it's important when you're looking for stones to turn them, to look at all aspects of them. And if you're not sure, take it home, clean it, and then study it again. Because you're not going to pick up a stone with very obvious mountain shapes to it, or features that you can just recognize in the field or with a quick look. Okay.
Yeah, so this was a very interesting one when Tom showed me this stone. When I look at this and I see that it's of a decent size, I know that I would certainly pick that up and be really happy to find it. And most likely, I take more rocks to the car than I should. I'm willing to make more trips with a backpack. But of course, the material the patina, the color, it's that gorgeous serpentine green with some other mineral that gives it that bluish tint. But with this front view, it looks interesting in form. But do you want to go to the next slide, Tom, where you show the other
Sure.
sides? You know, for someone really discerning, the form is just not going to hold up to scrutiny the same way. And so for me, sometimes I'll take a stone home if I know that I'm not going to go back to that location. I may or may not find a really outstanding form, but this is a beautiful example of material that will remind me of the place. It's more geology than art, if you want to put it that way, in terms of geology and art meeting. A beautiful rock, but not necessarily a brilliant viewing stone.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Even though I have this rock in my garage, it's looking for a new home.
Oh, well,
Now,
you'll find plenty of people who would give it the home.
yeah, let's contrast the stone we just looked at, the bluish green stone, with this stone. This is a stone from the Kamo River in Japan, Honshu Island, near Kyoto. And if we look at the shape of it, which is the outline, we see a nice triangular form mountain shape to it. And when you view it from the front, you also need to look at the three-dimensional aspects of the stone, because we did that with the previous one and saw the problem with that stone. Now, in this particular stone, we have the front, the back, one side, the other side. So if we look at it from the top, the back, the front, and both sides, we see it has a very nice shape tapering down. This is the features of a great landscape stone. This particular stone is also an older one that has been in collections for many, many years, and is often considered as a classic Japanese suiseki. It can be displayed in a wood base, as you see here, or it can be taken out and put in a large tray. So if you see a stone like this, grab it legally, of course, and because it really is a prize stone. And if you see one with this kind of shape and form, it's probably a quality stone. Now let's compare that with this next one.
This is a wonderful block of rock, right? It's so geometrically regular. When Tom and I looked at this and discussed it, I thought of all the times that my wife has said, do you have a rock that we could use to keep the door open? It's a perfect doorstop rock. The patina is beautiful. The material looks wonderful, but the regularity of the form is just hard to get out of one's mind. So it's like a useful stone. And I asked Tom, is there a category we could create called useful stones?
I agree with this. I often refer to this as a doorstop stone, as Paul has mentioned, but useful stones, certainly, because the stones like this are used in Japan for a pickle stone to put on top of a wood board when you're pickling vegetables. Now let's move on and look at a stone from the U.S., from Northern California, Trinity River watershed. And with this stone, we're going to be looking at surface textures. Surface textures range from smooth and rugged, wavy and undulating surfaces, reticulate. And there is a very broad range of patterns, from subtle to bold. This is not a particularly subtle surface pattern on this stone. I think it sort of shouts at you, but I find it to be very attractive, very beautiful stone, possibly serpentine, maybe with a little jade in it. I don't know. And when you look at a stone like this, it certainly stimulates your imagination. What do you see? Fish swimming in a rapidly flowing river? Do you see waves? The hair? I mean, it can generate or evoke feelings in your mind. And depending upon the person, I'm sure that if we ask each of you what you saw in this particular stone, we would get a fairly wide range of opinions. Now, well, let's look at another stone. This is from a beach in South Korea. And Paul, this stone looks ordinary at first glance.
Yes,
But
exactly. Exactly. Uh, and I'm sorry, Tom, I remember I was just thinking what a perfect contrast this is to the previous stone because uh you showed us the stone one day when we were discussing Korean stone tradition and current practice. And uh this stone appears to be a potato-like rock at first, but it has these very subtle nuances of color and pattern and what look like blemishes in the form. And I found that this stone really grew on me. And this is a stone that you photographed it beautifully to give it these two views. For me, this was a stone that holding it and really looking at it, it has a real a density and a presence. It has a real strength as a stone that's unexpected at first. Looking at this, I told Tom this made me want to go back and look more closely at a whole bunch of seemingly almost ordinary pebbles or little rocks that I've brought home to look more closely to see if I can differentiate the ones that have more nuance and subtlety like this or ones that really are just a simple rock.
yes, and this is when you're collecting stones in nature and you pick one up and it's covered with algae or mud, it's hard to see these subtle differences, and especially the color and pattern. So this is one reason to take a brush with you to clean it off, take a good look at it. Also, when the stone is dry, it will have a different appearance than when it's wet. So this is some of the subtleties in stone collecting that you need to master. Now let's go on to the next slide. This is a piece of Sado Island Akadama from Western Japan, from an island off the near Niigata. And the stone is known for its reddish colors or multiple colors. I have one stone that is 5 different colors in it, and it's been appreciated in Japan for many years. Now, this is the stone up close. It's a beautiful mountain shape, but most of the Sado Island Akadama stones have been enhanced using a chisel, cold chisel, to chip away pieces to obtain a particular form. Because in nature, the Akadama stones tend to be blocky and not particularly not a good form, but they do lend themselves to enhancing or changing the shape. So if you look at this stone, I particularly like this stone. I like to display it in the autumn for the colors. And I find it's a very pleasing stone for me, even though it's been enhanced. Now,
So,
Paul, tell us about these two stones.
so these, I'm chuckling because number one, I always find it hard presented with photographs to make a call. But I feel like there's a sort of short-term answer and a long-term answer. My immediate response, visually and intuitively, is that the one on the left has more variation in color and patina. And I particularly like on the left-hand side of the left-hand A stone, you can see that there's that one piece that's been exposed more that is really polished. But of course, on the right, number one, having a hole just adds literally a dimension of interest. Uh, it evokes hagstones, all of the associations that hagstones and stones with holes have of warding off spirits or bringing luck. This, as a piece of petrified wood, to me, immediately makes me think of trees and a knot in a tree or a piece of wood. And then the other thing, of course, about the one on the right is the beautiful curved form of it. So it still retains a kind of trunk-like tree quality, but form-wise, the one on the right is incomparably more interesting. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I agree. I like the one on the right better because it has more depth to it and a hole. But I think that we need to realize that many these stones were once trees, part of trees, but have been completely mineralized. So they do classify, in my opinion, as rocks. And the fact that they were originated as from the trees or fossils doesn't matter. I think a fossil like this can make a good viewing stone or even a great viewing stone. We have other examples that are even more impressive. So I think the fact that it is a piece of petrified wood shouldn't uh, interfere with your evaluation of it. Okay, so I happen to like petrified uh, wood, petrified plants as viewing stones. And let's move on to the next one. This stone we showed you at the very beginning. This is a silicaceous wax stone. And I saw this stone when we were in Malaysia visiting a couple of private collections. And I was particularly attracted to this stone for its form and for its color. It's very hard. And I was looking from one angle, I see the narrow diagonal ridges and furrows. It gives me a feeling of power as thrust and uplifting a huge or massive rock layers. Another angle, you look at it and the layers are horizontal. And a third aspect, looking at it from another viewpoint, you can see an overhang or a sheltered area to escape the elements. So this is in my opinion, a great stone. And I couldn't leave that person's collection without taking the stone with me. Of course, we agreed on it and he sold it to me. I didn't sneak it out. And I had it for years, for several years. And I sometimes display it in a tray with sand. And I'm only now thinking of having a base made for it. So here's a stone that is good from all angles, not just from a clear front and back, but it evokes different feelings from each angle that you look at it. So I would treat this as a really great stone.
To me, that's just a really important thing because when we think of viewing stones, we think of single views of a stone and reducing them to the photographed side of it. But that's not really, if you love stones, that's not really the way that you experience a stone. You don't only look at it, you're holding it and turning it, or you have, as Thomas had, multiple bases made for a single stone, or you have a pillow or sand where you can change the views and keep enjoying it from those different ones. But it's a different thing to appreciate a stone that looks good from multiple sides than it is to have one that is particular to one view.
This is also a good example of a good stone, and it's not black or dark gray. So you can have other colors in great stones. Let's move on to the next one. Stone from Colorado. And I think, Paul, you collected this one.
Yes, I found this stone out looking with our mutual friend Daryl Whitley, and this is a this is a stone that would be easy to think of as quote unquote just a rock, but it is exceptional in color and patina and density. It fits in the palm of your hand, and the ridges in it are almost counterintuitive because as a river stone, it feels like it should be more smooth, but the material is so dense that the shape in which it was formed and originated, that undulation of surface, has stayed there even though it's been in water for so long. So this is from a river canyon in Colorado where there have been historically volcanic vents. So a kind of seam in which magma boiled up. And this is probably, I learned this from a geologist at the University of Colorado, Lon Abbott. This is probably uh, formed at mantle depth, 20 or 30 miles down, probably 2 billion years old, around that age. And in answer to the question in the chat, that's a very simple piece of wood that I just picked up on the river that day. And I used it to show the stone this way because it balances the irregular bottom and it comes from the same place as the stone. But it has just enough formal feature to it's actually, I would call it a bison. The bison have the hump more than the buffalo, but it has just enough formal features to have shape to it to evoke in an abstract way an animal. And of course, the buffalo or bison is native to the place where the stone is from. So it's a nice association. But for me, this was an example where there's just enough form in an absolutely stunning piece of material to make it a very rewarding stone to spend time with.
I think also, Paul, that this stone suggests a bison to you, but it's not explicit. It's not a very clear animal shape. And that's another important feature. Some people feel that it has to be very explicit and even modify this stone to make it look more like a bison. I have one in my collection. It's been treated that way. So I think that the subtleness is another beautiful aspect to this stone. Let's just continue on. Here's a piece of petrified wood from the Uhaul Desert in California, southeastern California, bordering Arizona. And I put this stone in because as you turn this stone, different features of it come out and jump out at you. If you, here, for example, is one very nice feature to this stone, this little cavity, another concave surface in here. And as you turn this stone, you see different features, and each of those will speak to you. And I would display this stone where people can walk around it and look at it. because if you only look at it from one side, you miss features on the back and other parts of it. So it's a good stone, but I'm not sure it has the qualifications to be a great stone. And I think that this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. What makes an outstanding stone? And we'll talk more about that towards the end.
And you know,
here's a stone that Paul collected just. I live at the base of the San Gabriel Mountains. They're about 100 feet from my house. So Paul, tell us about this stone.
well, you know, what you just said about the piece of petrified wood is a good transition to this stone. This this is a very large, very heavy, very dense piece of material. Um, I found a geologist Gary Hayes, who wrote about rocks from the San Gabriels. So I asked him what he thought this might be, and he wrote back that um, it's quite likely be metamorphic gneiss and possibly a kind of version of marble. So this is 1.7, 1.8 billion year old terrain. So this, when I saw this in a stream at the base of the San Gabriels, I saw only the green ripples of the stone sticking up. And I was flabbergasted. It was so unusual and beautiful, just those features. And if you want, Tom, you can go to the next slide that has different views of it. Um, so, you know, the rippling energy in this stone combined with the density of it, the unusual green color, and then the rest of the stone has this, it's not a beautiful patina, but it is undeniably or irreducibly striking. And it, like the previous piece of petrified wood, I'd want to have this seen so that it rotated or you could see it from different sides. Even though it's so heavy, I would want to put it horizontal and vertical. But it's really, this stone is one of those stones. And this is actually the way that I've had it in my studio. Just on a pillow and being able to see the two sides, you really get a feeling of the energy in it. And of course, you can easily turn the view on the left into a kind of satyr or face in profile. You can see different things in the stone, but the energy in that stone, as someone who lives next to the San Gabriel Mountains, which are on the San Andreas Fault, which is one of the most dynamic, which is a euphemism for energy, large earthquakes waiting to happen places on the whole Earth. This large, heavy rock with those features carries with it all the energy of this place of the Earth in a really powerful way that is visually pleasing. So, like the piece of petrified wood, this is not something that would immediately be a viewing stone of exceptional quality, but it is a rock that has a tremendous presence to it and signifying kind of power. Tom, I remember when I brought it to lunch with you and Hiromi, you both responded to it quite strongly too. And I actually was surprised that you liked it as much as you did.
Yeah. Well, I feel that the pattern to it, you talked about energy, and most of us don't realize the significance of that. About 10 days ago, we had an earthquake here and the San Andreas Fault, and the whole house was shaking. And this is meant that these San Gabriel Mountains are new and they're rising, they're growing. And when you have enough energy to shake a whole city. Just think about that. And I don't know if San Gabriel's went up a half a millimeter or not that day, but that perhaps. But this stone really shows the power in the formation of rocks. Now, this next one is a small, relatively small rock from the Kanamu region of Hokkaido. And when I saw this rock, I picked it up and I first laid it horizontally, but then I kept moving it around and I ended up with this horizontal, with a vertical orientation. And as I looked at it, I noticed there are three figures, one in the background, one in the middle, and then a smaller, what looked like a smaller figure to here. And I looked at this and came to the conclusion that it suggested to me three people, perhaps a family, parents with a child. And I think the suggestive nature of a stone is another feature that we need to look at very carefully. And again, not too explicit, but subtle. And this has been one of my favorite smaller stones in our collection. Material's hard, color is good, and it's very suggestive in nature. Now here's an unusual stone. Paul, what are you looking at?
So this is a, for me, just truly unique stone. And Daryl Whitley collected this stone in the Colorado River, and Tom featured it in his North American Viewing Stone book. And Daryl called it Water Poem. And I really love that title because it is very poetic. And of course, it has all the flow of water in it. And the way that Daryl created the base for it and displays it is an expression of his feeling of what a sculptural stone this is. So Tom referred previously to stones that are likely to have been modified. So you're taking the rock and turning it in a way into sculpture, into carved rock. This is an exceptional stone because this is a natural stone that appears as if it could be a carved sculpture. When I first saw this, I immediately thought of Henry Moore sculptures. And Tom, who is the sculptor that Daryl has talked about associating with
Gene
this?
Epps.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a really interesting case where this is certainly not a landscape kind of stone at all. It more reminds one of a cultural object, a sculpture, but it's all the more exceptional for that reason. If I remember right, Daryl only saw a couple of the nubs sticking out of the ground and had to spend a lot of time digging it out.
Yeah, it is an exceptional stone. I think in the future, it's going to be considered as one of the most important stones collected in North America. Let's move on. This is a grapefruit sized stone. It from Japan, from a tributary of the Kamo River. And it's looks like a mountain peak with snow on it. And is this a particularly good stone? Let's look at it from all angles. I have a little turntable that I use, and also an electric one. I put stones on when I'm observing it and trying to evaluate it. And sometimes I'll look at it while it goes round and round and round. So it has pretty good form. It's not perfect, but it's still good. And I can clearly imagine the white part being snow. Now, what if I tell you this stone was owned by a famous Japanese artist, Kawamoto, who owned it about 100 years ago? He was an artist and on the faculty at the University of Kyoto and helped establish a new school of art in Japan. And he was known for his stone collecting. Now, does the provenance information change your appearance? Does it add to being an important stone or a outstanding stone, or does it detract? This is something that you need to keep in mind when you're collecting stones, and or if you have the opportunity of acquiring a stone from someone, a well-known figure, and because the provenance in stone collecting in both China and Japan and Korea is important, and it adds great value to it. And I think as our in North America and Europe and other countries, we're fairly young in terms of number of years we've been collecting stones. But some of the stones that have been collected in the last 50 years will become truly outstanding ones long in the future. Now we need to move on. This is a stone that I bought many years ago in Japan, maybe 15 years ago. And I saw it and I said, oh, I was impressed by this stone. There's one mountain peak, and then it comes down to a series of lower ones. And when I bought it from a very prominent figure in Japan, in the stone world, he said the bottom's been worked a little bit, but it's other than that, it's natural. And so later, I plan to exhibit this in a major exhibition. And when I showed it to one of the judges, he said, oh, this is a nice manufactured stone. It's completely manufactured. This is the bottom, the back side of it. And it's attractive. It's a nice stone to look at and appreciate, but it probably will never be a truly outstanding stone because of this reason. Now, moving on, here's another stone from Italy, the Ligurian Mountains. And does a stone have to be a landscape or contemplative stone to be a good one? I sure hope not, because this is one of my favorite stones. I consider it as a great stone. And it's the reason why I like it is because this is my eye resting stone or playful stone. I get this one out, look at it when I need to smile or take a break from working on the computer. So I'm of the strong opinion that figure stones like this can be great, even if they are a little more playful in nature. Paul, what's your thoughts on this?
Oh, you know how much I agree with you. I call everything that I do, reading, writing, photographing, collecting rocks, I call it all playing rocks. So I'm all for the playful enjoyment. I would just say Tom Elias has different standards. This makes me smile, but this is also just an unbelievably interesting and amazing stone. In addition to the smile and the dog-like suggestion, that it is a very playful stone, but it's incredible, the material and the form. Who could resist such a stone?
I do know a couple people that would take this on. This, you're looking at the back side of the stone, and if you cut it here, it would
Right.
make a decent landscape stone. But in my opinion, that would be a travesty, and because this stone is so unusual. So,
Definitely.
accept playful stones, stones that make you smile. It doesn't have stone appreciation doesn't always have to be serious and meditative. Here's a stone from Japan, again, the northernmost island of Hokkaido. If you look at the picture on the left, it's a wonderful waterfall. It's a narrow waterfall that's cut through the surface of the stone, very realistic looking. And if you only consider it from this angle, you could say, wow, this is a great stone. But when you turn it and look at sideways, it's really a very narrow slab, not more than an inch and a half, well, almost 2 inches, inch and a half, 3/4 wide. So it's a very narrow slab. And for this reason, it lacks the form needed for a waterfall stone, because the water has to originate somewhere, and it certainly can't be this little top up here, and then flowing down. And in my mind, this is not a particularly great rock, good rock, because of that. Yeah, some of you may not agree with me, because you can say, well, just look at it from the front, forget about turning it around. And you could give us your opinion when we open it up for discussion a little in a few minutes. Would you consider this to be a good rock, a nice rock, or would you toss it out and back on the rock pile? And let's move on to the next one. Paul, this is one of your stones.
Just being aware of the time, I won't go into the detail that I normally would with the quotation from a very good friend, Carl Hyatt, who's a photographer and writer of stone. But this particular stone is it's the same material as the water poem Remarkable stone that we saw. Beautiful, very old, very dense, calm presence. But I wanted to bring this stone in because this is the single stone that I've spent the most time with, that I have. Ever since I found this, I've kept it on a table next to me or the desk next to me, and I spend a lot of time touching the stone, leaving my hand resting on it. Just that very slight curve has that quality, and it's large. And so you can sort of run your hand back and forth across it. And we put this in because I wanted to talk about the aspect of touch. Viewing stone is inherently a visual metaphor. And a friend of mine who's a stone worker in Vermont, Dan Snow, wrote a wonderful book called Listening to Stone. And he says stone speaks through the hands because touch, being the oldest of our senses, is most sensitive to its language. So Dan is a stone worker, and when he talks about touch, he's talking about knowing where to cut and sculpt and carve rocks as well. But I think of this a lot because stone appreciation and the development of a relationship to stone, for me, over time, happens more through handling stones than it does in looking at them. So we just wanted to bring in at the end this other sort of dimension of stone appreciation. And I had forgotten, but there's another famous, I think it's a Song Dynasty poem about stones, but a collector has been looking at this stone and cherishing it, but in the end, all he wants to do is sit and hold the stone. He doesn't want to look at it anymore as he ages. And that just sort of feels like the epitome of this different relationship to stone.
So we'll move through the last few slides quickly so we can get into a lively discussion. And certainly the sense of beauty and inspiration in stone appreciation will mature as the number of stones you collect and handle increases. I've observed that novices usually look for very obvious forms, a plateau, a mountain, or a hut, whereas the more experienced collector will appreciate more of the subtleties found in stones. And expanding the criteria a little bit, we added tactile experience here. I think I'll wait till we open it for discussion to go into that further. Now, what makes a good viewing stone? Is it the physical features of a rock that make it great? Or is it the viewing experience? What happens in the mind of the viewer when looking at the stone? Or is it both? Now, a synergy develops when several features of a good stone combine to evoke feelings. What you see and feel in a stone is based upon your life experiences, education, knowledge. So a single stone can evoke different reactions among people. But I feel it's the viewing experience that is most important. Now, we want to thank you for watching. If you found this program to be interesting and want to learn more, our previous seminars that we had can be found on YouTube at the Tom Elias 8358 channel, and you're welcome. There's no cost to see them. So now it's time for questions, sharing, and Paul and I will try to respond to your questions. Paul, there's a few questions